Welcome back to Marvelous Videos. I'm Rylan, and today we'll be diving deeper into the Dune 1984 movie, explained in great detail. Frank Herbert's first novel of the franchise, Dune, received great positive reviews from critics, as well as earning the Nebula Award for Best Novel, as well as the Hugo Award. It is also considered to be the best-selling sci-fi novel of all time. Like many great pieces of literature, Herbert's Dune was rejected by more than a dozen publishers before being printed by a firm that only did automobile manuals. The novel itself is a success story. Its content is what made it a success and a favorite for anyone who wishes to write or create a piece of art in the sci-fi genre. The Dune universe is rather complex and is set in a futuristic world, thousands of years ahead of contemporary times. It is a time when people have discarded the use of computers, and no one is allowed to make machines that think like men. This purging of human mind-like machines are called the Butlerian Jihad. Naturally, it became imperative for humans to increase their mental capacity. This was when the spice mélange came into the picture. It was an awareness spectrum narcotic that expanded an individual's consciousness as well as the longevity of the body. However, this came at the cost of addiction to the spice, since the spice mélange was the most profitable and crucial commodity of the universe. Several intergalactic peoples waged wars and conspired against one another. In 1984, David Lynch produced the first Dune film, which was followed by two TV shows, one in 2000 and another in 2003 respectively. While Lynch's film successfully brought most parts of the book to life, critics and Dune fans both complained that the film lacked coherence and drifted away from the source material. Furthermore, things like personal monologues, etc., were nothing less than a pain. Having said that, Lynch's film now enjoys a cult classic status, because it was an efficient effort to summarize an extremely detailed novel into a film. A second Dune film is set for release later this year and is being directed by Denis Villeneuve, the man behind such films as 2016's sci-fi film Arrival. In this video, we will dive deep into David Lynch's Dune and answer some of the long-standing questions about the film, and also look at the various differences between the film and the book. So, dear Fremen of Arrakis, are you ready to explore the depths of the sand dunes? Before we go into today's analysis, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small step for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thanks. Now, on with the video. The year is 10,191, and the known universe has become a den of intergalactic feudal politics and war. The Padishah Emperor Shaddam Corino IV rules the universe, but his popularity grows weaker by the day. Also, all civilizations across various planets depend on a precious substance known as the spice mélange, a substance that extends life, expands consciousness, as well as enables space travel. Amidst these planets and different societies exists the mighty and feared Spacing Guild and its navigators, who use orange spice gas to fold space and travel to and fro the far reaches of the universe without moving. The Spacing Guild caught the attention of 4 planets. They were Catan, which was the home of the Padishah Emperor Shaddam Corino IV, Giedi Prime, which was the home of the House of the Harkonnen, Caladan, which was the home of the House Atreides, and Arrakis, a hot and arid desert planet, and the only place where the spice mélange could be found. The guild also sensed that there was a plot to jeopardize the spice production, so they dispatched a Stage 3 navigator to Emperor Shaddam to demand explanations. Emperor Shaddam was quick to disclose his plans to destroy the House of Atreides, because the Emperor was growing worried about Duke Leto Atreides' growing popularity. He suspected that the Duke was building a secret army with a technique that had something to do with sound. Naturally, Duke Atreides was a threat to the Emperor. It would have been unwise to attack the Duke on Caladan, so he devised an elaborate plan to give the Duke control over Arrakis by replacing the Harkonnens.
At an appointed time, Baron Harkonnen will return to Arrakis and launch a sneak attack on House Atreides.
The Harkonnens would later launch a secret surprise attack on the Duke in Arrakis and eliminate him from the House of Atreides. The Navigator, however, asks the Emperor to assassinate Paul Atreides, the son of Duke Atreides.
Problem within House Atreides. Paul.
But this plan of assassination became known to the Bene Gesserit sisterhood, who were alerted.
We must have a look at Paul Atreides on Caladan.
It turned out that Paul was a part of an ancient breeding program that was intended to find the Kwisatz Haderach, a child that would have the ability to access the generic memories of ancestors. The Duke, Paul, and an armada of the House of Atreides are set to leave for Arrakis to seek control. But before that happens, Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohayim tests Paul by subjecting him to excruciating pain and physical suffering.
Silence! Silence!
I must not fear.
He passes her test by withstanding more pain than anyone else had before him. Meanwhile, Baron Vladimir Harkonnen on Gedi Prime reveals to his nephews, Feyd-Rautha and Glasu Raban, the plan of eliminating the House of Atreides. Baron Vladimir Harkonnen had managed to manipulate someone extremely close to the Duke, and also turned a traitor out of this someone. On planet Caladan, the Atreides begin the course of their journey to Arrakis. Arrakis was a planet with vast deserts and rocks. The major denizens, including the enormously huge sandworms, and a people called the Fremen, who believed that one day they would be led to true freedom by a messiah. Upon their arrival, Duncan Idaho, one of Duke's close confidants, tells him that the Fremen could be used as powerful allies.
I suspect so much. I think they are the allies we seek. They are strong.
And the Fremen initially trusted the charismatic and just leader, but before they could forge any significant alliance, the Harkonnen launched a massive attack and took over the House of Atreides on Arrakis. The attack was successful because of the involvement of Dr. Wellington Yueh, who had his own personal motives. Later, the Baron got Dr. Yueh killed, and the Duke himself died in a failed attempt to kill the Baron using a poison gas capsule. However, Duke's concubine, Jessica, and his son, Paul, managed to escape and reach the deep sands. They soon forged an alliance with the Fremen, where Paul turned out to be the Muad'Dib, or the political and religious leader that the Fremen had long been awaiting. The Fremen and Paul Muad'Dib now had a common enemy. Paul soon devised a plan to bring the universe's attention to the planet of Arrakis, and, by extension, bring the Emperor and the Baron to Arrakis to exact his revenge. He started training the Fremen to use the weirding modules, or a sonic beam weapon, that translated specific sounds into potent attacks. Alongside the Fremen, he started destroying the spice mines. With the supply of spice mélange stopped, the Spacing Guild came to warn the Emperor about the evolving situation. The Guild feared that the Muad'Dib would eventually take the Water of Life, a blue liquid that unlocked genetic memories. Paul, being a prophetic man, sensed this fear of the Guild in one of his dreams, and decided to take the Water of Life.
You are my life.
He initially has an adverse effect to it, and goes into a coma, where he witnesses several visions, but he wakes up to learn that he can control the Sandworms. Meanwhile, the Emperor and Baron had arrived at Arrakis for a final battle, but with the help of the Sandworms and the Fremen, Paul Muad'Dib eventually defeats his enemies. By now, he had become extremely powerful, and had even commanded rain on the desert planet of Arrakis. It was later revealed that Paul was the Kwisatz Haderach. Spice mélange and politics around it. The very arid lands of Arrakis are the only natural source of the spice mélange, which was often considered to be the most valuable commodity in the entire universe. To give you an example of its value, one case of spice mélange was enough to purchase an entire planet. The spice mélange is a drug that fortified its immunity, so much that it could triple the average life expectancy, enhanced vitality, and heightened awareness in people. But, as mentioned, it is essentially a narcotic component and creates addiction, the withdrawal symptoms of which can be fatal. Interestingly enough, the spice mélange tasted different every time a person consumed it. Like life itself, the spice gives out a different taste every time, but its most important use is its capability to unlock prescience that aids in interstellar travel. Because it was a naturally occurring awareness spectrum narcotic, it became the building block of accelerated commerce and technological development in the universe for several millennia. As a result, it helped in cultural evolution, as people started traveling more and to vast distances through warp space. The substance also helped the Fremen create several articles, like chemical explosives, fiber, paper, etc. When the House of Atreides came to Arrakis, spice mélange was the only commodity that could make or break an empire. Naturally, a planet so desolate and harsh that no one cared about it became the center of attraction and a greatly prized fief. Mining for the spice mélange became one of the most important operations that empires and kingdoms overtook. But this prestigious task was hindered by the extremely territorial and aggressive Sandworms, and also by the Fremen of Arrakis, who employed guerrilla tactics to ward off the intergalactic people who came to harvest the spice mélange for their own personal and selfish interests. Naturally, this gave way to a tussle between the stakeholders. To break the Atreides monopoly over the production of the spice mélange, many people had attempted to bring the Sandworms to other planets. When Paul Muad'Dib's son, Leto Atreides II, came to power, he dictated several terms to the production and consumption of the spice. Although the production reduced drastically during this time, he had massive stockpiles of the spice mélange that he kept hidden. Nevertheless, such stockpiles were considered a threat to positions and empires. The Emperor, the Spacing Guild, the Bene Tleilax, and the Bene Gesserit, all of these groups struggled to ensure that no one person or power had a sizable supply of the spice. Apart from the houses and the Emperor of the Universe, 3 groups were critically dependent on the substance. They were the Bene Gesserit, Spacing Guild, and the Fremen. Sandworms of Dune explored. The sandworms, or Shai-Hulud, were a species found on the planet Arrakis. These sandworms were vital for the creation of the spice mélange. The spice mélange was found inside sand trouts, or the larval form of the sandworm. Thousands of sand trouts would be present in a location deep beneath the surface, and they would suck large water bodies dry, terraforming any region into vast deserts. When sand trouts excreted, spice mélange came out of them. In other cases, the fungal excretion of a sand trout would get dissolved in water. Later, this substance would reach the surface. The intense heat and atmosphere of Arrakis would lead to a chemical reaction, producing the spice mélange. The sandworms were huge and naturally impactful, therefore enjoying fear and honor. Sandworms are extremely territorial and would fight their own kind or any other living being to retain their piece of land. While they can grow up to 450 meters in length, some believe that the largest sandworms measure up to 1,000 meters. A probable cause of these exaggerated numbers might be that these creatures keep growing until the day they die, and they can live for thousands of years. A sandworm's outer skin is orange in color and thick and rough in texture. Because their skin is made of thousands of tough and hardened scales, each a few square feet in area, it protects the gargantuan creature from internal sand invasions and other hostile events. Over the period of time, the Fremen had discovered a way to compromise the sandworm's hard and scaly outer skin. This could be achieved by prying open an edge and allowing sand to get into the softer insides of the sandworm, which causes intense levels of irritation to it. Once this was done, the sandworm rolls over to ensure that the damaged portion was high above the ground. Otherwise, sand would encroach on its softer interiors and cause excruciating aggravation. When a sandworm is in this condition, it doesn't dive into the sand. making it possible to ride the worm. Worm riding is a sacred act and is often considered important as a coming-of-age ritual. Interestingly, just like light is often used to measure distances in light years, sandworms are also used to measure distances. 1 unit would cover the distance until the sandworm got exhausted and dived into the sand. If we talk about the historic, mythological, and literary inspiration behind the sandworms, the dragons of European mythology that guarded treasure, as well as the dragon of Beowulf, come to mind. Just like these dragons protected something valuable, the sandworms, in a way, protect the most valuable substance in the entirety of the universe, the spice mélange. Sandworms are attracted to rhythmic vibrations, and their arrival is preceded by lightning due to the static discharge of electricity. For this reason, travelers had to move without a rhythm, as the sandworms often perceived rhythm as prey in the form of smaller sandworms, or enemies in the form of mature ones. The only potent weapon against these mighty beasts was water. Even a small amount of water could cause high levels of poisoning in the sandworms, which would ultimately lead to an excruciatingly painful death. Dune. Differences between the book and the movie. While Lynch's film and Herbert's novel bear many similarities in terms of plot, there are several key differences between the two pieces of art. Firstly, the most glaring and probably criminal difference lies in the portrayal of the weirding way that the House of Atreides used. While Herbert's weirding way was essentially a martial arts form based on precognitive thought, Lynch changed it to using guns that worked because of specific sounds. Lynch didn't want kung fu on sand dunes. That's just more magic and less mind. The Guild Navigators didn't make an appearance in Herbert's first book, and when they make a physical appearance, they look rather humanoid than what was portrayed in Lynch's film, which picturized them as huge floating blobs with humanoid eyes.
I see plans within plans.
Yes, Herbert's Guild Navigators indeed had a few aquatic features, but come on, Mr. Lynch. We didn't want to see a floating tumor. While the book's Baron Harkonnen was a giant man who couldn't carry his own weight, Lynch's film gave him pus-filled blisters and a typical fatness. Secondly, Harkonnen was a homophobic pedophile in the books, but the film toned down his character a little and didn't explicitly detail his sexuality or orientations. But yeah, he was a jerk nonetheless. Herbert's Harkonnen was an evil genius, but Lynch turned him into a sleazy, vicious buffoon. Lastly, Lynch's film elegantly drifted away from the book's climactic sequence, in which Paul Muad'Dib causes rain to occur on Arrakis in what can only be described as an act of God. However, the book's message was to denounce the existence and powers of messiahs and such other cultist leaders. By making Paul cause rain, the film completely misses the point, and rather goes against the notions of the book. Now, if that's a good shift or a bad one, we'll let you decide. Denis Villeneuve is set to take the reins of the new Dune film, the first half of which would be Frank's first novel, and the latter would be brought to life in a sequel. Given the complexities of the Dune universe, it's only logical to picturize the film in 2 separate installments. Only time will tell just how successful the new film will be. But from seeing Denis' other films like Arrival and The Blade Runner, we might not be disappointed. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to send a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. For marvelous videos, I'm Rylan. Have a good one and be safe.